Welcome back to Vintage Super League. I am joined by Season 1 winner and Season 5 competitor, Steven Menendia. Steve, congratulations.
Thanks, Eric. Thank
That
you.
was that was a wild match and a wild game three. I mean, we got to see some of your thoughts. I would normally ask you after a turn of that length with so many steps what your thoughts were, but luckily you provided that for us with some notepad insight and yeah, there. Oh, that was tough. That was interesting.
Yeah, it was tough, and my brain was just fried by the end of that, so it wasn't nearly as clear as I'd hoped it would be. I was just praying to try. See, the trick. The trick. I don't know how many people caught on this, but the trick is that if I use the Lotus inside the Will, then I can't use it inside the Doomsday stack. So
Right.
I have to DT for the fast bond in order to even have a chance of being able to combo to be able to play the Maniac post Doomsday. If I just left in the Tendrils, it would have been less interesting, I suppose.
It would have taken one less minute.
Yeah, in the in game two, the only reason I didn't scoop was because I was just praying to draw Mox way sooner, but I couldn't find a Mox. Like, I figured like once he resolved Arcane Lab, if I can find a Mox, I can play Time Walk, Gush. You know what I mean? Like I can actually try and do some things, but I probably should have scooped way sooner.
Yeah, I mean, as you can probably imagine, especially after sideboard where there's no dead cards, his hand was
Yeah,
stacked.
yeah. I
When
was
you're
just
thinning
like,
your deck of all your lands every turn, so you're just
I
drawing exactly what you need, it's like, all right.
I needed to draw Mox Sapphire like 10 times before 20 turns before I drew it, and then I might have actually been able to do something. But it was
Yeah,
an interesting game. I mean, he locked me out, and I brought 3 Trigons, so I knew he was going to be bringing in, a bunch of hate, whether it's Stony Silence or Arcane Lab or whatever. It's funny actually. You can Doomsday for 3 Trigon Predators and Laboratory Maniac and win the game with 20 damage on the last draw.
yeah, assuming they don't have threats out or swords to
Yeah,
plowshares in
or
their hand.
or anything.
Yeah.
Sure.
It probably takes a pretty weird game where that's going to be your best path to victory. You're like, I can't win through Lad Maniac and decking. I can't win through like what game can you not win with Lad Maniac where it's going to live? Like they can't kill it, but you couldn't deck yourself. It's
Well,
pretty hard.
Trigon Predator's like amazing against Landstill unless they have the plow or the mentor. If they don't have mentor and you can protect it from a plow, it can deal with anything. I mean, they can't attack in with factories, really, unless you have multiple factories. It takes out Standstill, it takes out Crucible, it takes out Arcane Lab, it takes out Stony Silence, it takes out their mana.
Yeah, I mean Trigon's been a vintage staple for a long time, and you're definitely the one, in especially our league, who's played it the most, and it's found its way into a number of decks. I know that we used to all play a lot of blue red Delver, Young Pyromancer, and it was
Those
very
were the
common to
days.
have green and something like Trigon Predator. So um,
Yeah.
it's a card that all of us have experience playing against now, and a lot of that is thanks to.
So what's our match? What's on deck?
So on deck we've got Hall of Famer Bob Marr playing against Vintage World
Awesome.
Champion Brian Kelly. So yeah, this is for yet another spot. As you know, we're playing four in a row, win and ends. Steve Menendian and Paul Rietzel are our first two to capture those spots. We have Bob Marr versus Brian Kelly. The winner is going to get the third spot, and then our last match after us is going to be Shuei Nakamura against David Williams. So we've got a lot of good magic on tap. This is it's a long night. We've already been going for
Yeah.
quite a while and got a lot more magic left to play, but we've had some great matches. The more time it takes, it generally means the magic is pretty exciting. So it's going to be a late night, but we're hoping to deliver some great matches. Of course, the last one was fantastic, and yeah, I'm expecting big things from this match. And any insight into, Bob's playing the Shops deck with Dark Depths, and Brian Kelly, of course, playing his Mentor deck with Bob's. So any insight into that matchup?
I think this is going to be a good match. I think Brian was just really disadvantaged against Paul, but this is a match where I think both players have a lot of things they can do. So I expect Bob to come out swinging, and I think, and this, Brian's big advantage, frankly, I think is just Dark Confidant is probably awesome. Isn't Dark Confidant always good against Bob? Yeah,
Yeah, that tends to be the case. I know that Bob usually kills himself with his own Bobs. It ended
yeah,
up happening
exactly.
to Owen Turtenwald in the finals of Vintage World Champs a while back. But yeah, Bob is just a good Magic card and a pretty good player sometimes as well. So you know, it's good to see them on both sides of the board. All right, sounds like our players are ready. So round 6 of our qualifier tournament, the win and end between Bob Maher and Brian Kelly, coming up now. Hey guys, welcome back to Vintage Super League. On the top, we have Brian Kelly playing Esper Mentor. On the bottom, Bob Maher playing Shop's Depths. And yeah, this is a win and the winner is going to be in Season 5 of Vintage Super League. Looks like Bob's about to mulligan. What do you think about Brian's hand?
Brian's hand is pretty weak. I can't imagine that he would keep it, but it is good against sphere effects. Who's on the play here? It looks like Bob is on the play. So that Chalice, if he lands Chalice for 0, that's going to be brutal against Brian if he kept that. Looks like he may have. I guess he gets to see 2 cards. Would you keep that?
That's interesting. I don't know. It's very hard for me to mulligan a hand with Black Lotus.
Yeah.
That said, this one basically has 5 lands. Mox Emerald is not providing much. It's not really the most useful card when you have the Black Lotus as well, just because you typically want those Moxes to cast a faster Monastery Mentor, maybe something like Jace, but Black Lotus is already going to get that job done. So Mox Emerald is very similar to a land here, and even worse against a shop deck where they might have Sphere Effects and or, like you mentioned, the Chalice. So
If Brian keeps this hand is going to be really funny because Bob is going to not only have Chalice 0, but he's going to have Crucible Wasteland going. So, Brian is going to be not far from the situation I faced. I tend to understand. I totally agree with what you were saying, but I would tend to mulligan Brian's hand for a couple reasons. One is that you're going to see 2 more cards, but the probe has a lot less value here, and the other thing is that this game 1 is probably much worse than post board because post board he gets plows.
See what his draw was?
Yeah, Mox Pearl. So
right on time after a Chalice 0. But yeah, it's tough. Like I said, the Black Lotus is such a good card against shops, and just having a land heavy hand, this is the matchup where you want it. You want it against the workshop decks where you don't mind. Like you're gonna see a lot of decks boarding in 1, 2, even 3 or more lands against the workshop decks, and so the fact that you have a land heavy hand, this is kind of the matchup where you don't mind that. Of course, This is the hand that really punishes that, and he's just completely bricked. And now Wasteland and Crucible. Bob doesn't have any action. I'm not sure how many basics Brian has, but he will get to play a bunch of fetch lands. So he can definitely build up to cast a somewhat reasonable spell should he find one. Of course, his hand is 3 cards that are uncastable in 4 lands, so pretty far away from that. Bob finds Expedition Map. That can get Strip Mine, which is pretty nice with Crucible out. Wasteland and Strip Mine start taking care of these Misties. But I mean, he also has the option to go get Mishra's Factory for a clock. He can get Dark Depths. He can get Thespian Sage, which is fine.
So Brian has in his main deck he has 1 basic island, and he has no other basics in his sideboard. So he's fortunate to have drawn all these fetch lands. In fact, he has 8 fetch lands, but he's going to be really constrained on mana, as you've been pointing out. Not only does he have the Lotus and multiple Moxen in hand, but Brian actually runs like the full old school complement of Artifact Acceleration. So he's got Mana Crypt and Lotus Petal and all 5 Moxen. So that Chalice is just totally brutal on the play.
Yeah, but he is going to get to cast at least one good spell should he find one at some point, just because this is not like the game we just saw you play against David Williams, where he was able to get Strip Mine Crucible out when you had 1 land and no more in hand, where Brian can just play fetch lands every single turn. It's not like Bob can just waste the fetch land, replay waste, kill the land. He can do that, but Brian's still going to get up to 3 or 4 lands with that path, and so this is very far from a lock. Once he starts cracking these fetch lands, however, Bob can start taking down a land every turn, so he might not get to cast more than 1 or 2 relevant spells, but he should get the opportunity to actually play those.
That's true. And I imagine that Brian was wishing he was running a deck. Brian's best possible play, I guess, is probably going to be a Jace, right? At this point.
Yep.
If you're
Jace would be great here.
Yeah, I would imagine Jace would be probably a little bit better than the Mentor. Um,
Any creature would be great. If he draws
Dark
mentor, he can
Confidant.
just play. He can just play two of his artifacts, make two monks, and then prowess them multiple times next turn. The cards will get countered, but
That's true.
he can
Yeah.
turn all these monks into monks. So
Into
Monastery Mentor is a pretty great draw. It's not.
if you're Bob, what do you get with this thing? I mean, it's not like Strip Mine actually accelerates you any further.
No, not against one basic. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no land that is incredibly exciting.
Well, his options are Dark Depths, Tolarian Academy, Ancient Tomb, Thespian Stage,
You can get Tabernacle.
Yeah, and the Tabernacle.
Could
Long.
shut down some win conditions, but
I think I agree with you. I think Tabernacle is probably best because even if like Brian were to be able to get like a Bob down, at least the Tabernacle in the long run would take care of it, just through recursive stripping and wasting. I don't really like the fact that he got a strip mine there. It only deals with one land. You know,
it's
as you
possible
point out.
Bob has not looked at the lists for whatever it's
Yeah.
because I mean that he's a busy guy.
True enough.
He may not know that there's only one basic in this deck.
I have to imagine Brian's. Well, I have to imagine he's going to get a land. Yeah, I would say not another duel. So Brian doesn't actually have a lot of dual lands. He has in his deck. I think he has 3 C. Let's see. Yeah, he only has 3 Cs, 2 Tundras, and the library. So he's got only 5 dual lands.
So 7 lands to tap for mana total.
Yeah, and he has library.
Interesting that the turn one chalice against Brian's hand was so good, but it actually did nothing. I mean, if all of these artifacts were in play, well, I guess he could hardcast Force of Will now, but Brian has just drawn nothing but mana sources, had nothing to accelerate into. Again, the Force of Will he could now hardcast if he was able to play those artifacts, but
Ooh, maybe the right play was just actually sitting on that expedition map. It's not like the strip mine did anything so far whatsoever. I've been impressed by Bob's play earlier, but I'm not sure that was the right earlier this evening. I'm not sure that was the right call.
Well, it looks like his game plan right now is to try to keep Brian off Jace the Mind Sculptor mana, which isn't the worst idea. Jace is a great threat. He's also potentially keeping him off Mentor. Again, he doesn't know that Brian has so many lands in his hand, but like you mentioned, Brian's got so much of his mana is in these artifacts, and it's pretty unlikely that Brian's just drawn a bunch of lands that he can keep playing land drops every turn. So it's just kind of an anomaly of a draw.
In fact, to that point, the 2 fetch lands, there's only 2 other dual lands he can fetch out. 2 lands he can fetch out in his deck. Once he gets this 3rd Underground Sea.
Well, that's one of the draws.
Definitely. Actually, I take that back. I think there's only 1 land he can fetch out because he's. I'm sorry. There's only 1 land he can fetch out, which is the basic island. He's accessed all of his dual lands, so one of those fetch lands is not going to do anything.
Wow. So then it actually is not that unusual to get that strip mine. Bob's plan is to knock him off all of his mana within a couple turns. If he knows that one of the Misties is dead already. This is a pretty reasonable line. If you're able to, next turn take out 1 more land, you could have Brian back on 0 mana.
Yeah, this is insane. Although he's drawn some of the like you said, some of the best things he could draw. I guess so. Let's see. He really, really, really needs to find Steel Sabotage, right, or Repeal. Those would work just fine.
Well, he has to put back this fetch land, right? Especially if one of them in play is already dead. That's got to be the worst card in his deck. And then I guess the off-color Mox is next.
Yeah, and he hasn't even drawn a Gush, which would actually...
Actually, this is actually perfect. The Brainstorm's so good, he can put back the Tundra or the Underground Sea, and now he can fetch it.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, and he needs to find, as we were saying, I think he needs to find Repeal, Steel Sabotage, or... Is there anything else that gets him out of this?
Back, but he didn't put back the Flooded Strand. So if he does only have 1 fetchable land in his deck and now 2 at the Tundra, that's a pretty bizarre decision to hold on to the Flooded Strand over the Mox. The Mox, it doesn't look like it's doing much, but it's still doing more than a fetch land that can't fetch. I guess the Shuffle effect might be more useful with a Ponder in hand. But
it does. These fetch lands actually do eat a wasteland because Bob is going to have to destroy one, and then Brian just will not use it. So then he'll just use the last one that gets wasted.
Well, at this point, Brian has enough lands in play that it's going to be a long time before these strip effects are going after the fetch lands again.
That's true.
So once we get to that point, Brian's going
He-
to be basically stuck on 1 mana again, and at that point, Bob's in pretty firm control.
yeah. If he had Wasteland or Gosh at any point, he could have at least given some of these lands a reprieve and bought a lot more time.
Well,
All he's seen is
as we've
counter
seen,
magic.
both players combined have not drawn a spell that has any impact.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been no action drawn between both our players in the number of cards now.
Yeah, Dark Depths isn't coming down anytime soon. Bob is clearly committed to the
Oh.
plan.
Well, he drew a map.
That's interesting. So let's just go through the math here. If he plays Dark Depths now and activates the map, then next turn he can put into play the Thespian stage and activate it
Mhm.
and attack the following turn. So it takes three. It takes this turn, next turn, and the following turn to win the game.
Brian
And that
would
assumes
have turns.
what?
Brian would have 2 turns, and he'd
Yeah.
have access to at least 3 mana, if not 4 or 5 or more.
Right, and that would just be no wastelanding or stripping. I think at this point, if you know Brian's deck, I think I would just be inclined to stick to the strip mine plan.
I agree. Yeah, I
Although
think-
it's darn tempting. Brian has no plows main deck at all. Although repeal on a token works just as well.
I think that one of the key cards you lose to in this type of scenario is Jace the Mind Sculptor. And
Definitely.
so if he has something like that, you're much better off stripping and wasting. If he doesn't, you want to keep him off being able to draw into that, and giving him more time doesn't matter if he doesn't have any lands, because he can't play any fast mana thanks to the Chalice. You are opening yourself up potentially to losing to something like Repeal or Steel Sabotage, getting rid of the Chalice and then accelerating him into playing one of those big spells.
Exactly.
But it's not, I don't think it's as risky.
I agree.
It's just trying to assemble this Dark Depths combo.
Right. Yeah, the Timmy play. I think both plays look at least viable, but I think they both plays have risks, I mean, both lines, but I think this is the safest.
Bob would not mind finding, sphere effects, tangle wires, just
Oh.
something to like know that nothing bad is going to happen for a turn or two, so that he can finish off this lock with the Crucible.
Yeah, I mean, Bob's draws right now could be Smokestack, Tangle Wire.
It might take too much time to actually
Yeah, that's true.
matter at this point. I mean, the Wasteland is basically a smokestack, but
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be bad. It would be better than more workshops.
Yeah, I mean, he has Force Sphere, Forthorn, a Trinisphere, and a Golem.
Yeah.
So any of those, in Revoker wouldn't be bad either, because then he could just be like, okay, I'm going to proactively deal with Jace.
Yeah, Monastery Mentor is definitely a potential problem, but
He's got the
he would just love
map.
that turn or two reprieve to like really finish this strip mine game off.
Yeah. Well, Monastery Mentor, even if it resolves, is going to have to deal with the long-term problem of. So it can generate right now. Mentor, if it were to hit, can generate. Let's see, 1, 2, maybe 3 token friends, and
Well,
then
the Tabernacle is in his main deck, right? So he
Yeah,
does have
that's
that
what I'm
map
saying.
open. Okay.
So he can generate 3. Brian Kelly can generate 3 tokens, but then on Brian's end step, Bob just activates the expedition map, finds the Tabernacle, and Brian Kelly can only pay for 3 of the creatures, and attack, and then the next turn he's going to get strip mined every turn. This Tangle Wire kind of just deals with all of that anyway.
Right.
So
I assume that Brian's going to be forced to force this.
Definitely. He's in a real tough spot.
So you said he only has 1 fetchable land left in his deck plus 1 in his hand. Is that right?
Yeah, let's look. He has 3 in his deck. He has 3 seas, 2 tundras, and 1 island. And it looks like there's a sea in hand, 2 sea in the graveyard, 1 tundra in the graveyard. So there's a tundra and there's a tundra in play. So there's no more fetchable lands. That's it. And he's drawn the point I was making earlier. Yeah, he's drawn the.
Here comes Mana Crypt.
Demonic Tutor, too little, too late.
Is it?
I don't even. Well,
Anything?
you're
You get
right.
Dark
No,
Buff
no,
or something.
no. The best thing he can get here is Steel Sabotage.
Steel Sabotage. Yeah.
Steel Sabotage might win this game. Holy smokes!
Does he have? You said he had
Oh
one land
my
left in his deck. That's fetchable.
God. No, I think Steel Sabbath, if Bob doesn't draw anything relevant, I think Brian can win this. Brian has no more fetchable lands, but he's going to get Wasteland. And Steel Sabotage only costs 1 mana.
Yeah.
So he can bounce the Chalice, play Lotus, Mox, Petal, Will, replay all of those, and DT Tendrils with Probe. Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
You are
nuts.
correct. That is going to be game winning. Now Bob knows what's up. Like Bob knows that Repeal and Steel Sabotage are in this deck. He knows that the tutor's going to get them. So
This better be good. Smokestack! Oh, what a dagger. Turn too late. Actually, it was 2 turns too late. Because that fetch land would just be fodder for the stack. Well, he has no choice. He has to wasteland one of these duels.
yeah,
I like the
one more turn, right?
Yep. I assume it's. I mean, so Brian's graveyard. So it's going to be Lotus, Lotus Petal, Mox, Will, and Repeal. That's 5 Storm. That's plenty. Not to mention the stuff that it.
He's got a bunch of probes and stuff in there too. It's gonna
exactly.
Be, he can tentacles for like 20.
He's got 2 probes in his graveyard. In addition to the fact that he can just replay the Repeal on a Mox Sapphire, mana neutral. So he's got more than enough. All he has to do is DT for Tendrils and win. This is insane. Wow. Incredible. My God.
Comes the smokestack right on time.
It's interesting that not even Hercule's Recall would have done it. So, like, in the old school, like, big blue decks, you'd run Hercules as the one main deck bounce spell. But Brian Kelly has 2 that were viable options here, Repeal and Steel Sabotage.
Yeah, Repeal is one that, you wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, Hercule's Recall would not have done it where Steel Sabotage would.
Let me just double check and make sure that he actually has Steel Sabotage main deck. I might be speaking out of turn there. No, he does. He has a Steel Sabotage main deck and one in the board. Incredible. Chalice of the Void restricted. Chalice Wasteland
Here comes
Lock.
a whole bunch of restricted cards for you.
Seen a lot of
vomiting restricted cards onto the table.
We've seen a lot of Yawgmoth Willing today. It's interesting that a lot of the mentor type decks have shifted. They've diminished the number of cages they run, and in favor of a lot of Containment Priest. Like Containment Priest is becoming increasingly popular vis-a-vis Cage. I think it's created a little bit of an opening for Yawgmoth's Will.
Did he actually need the Lotus Petal, or he wouldn't have had enough mana? He's actually, doesn't have that much.
No. Well, he needs to generate 6 mana post Will.
Mm-hmm.
With the
which he does have plenty of, but
yeah,
I think he's only going to be about 1 over.
Yeah, the 2 Lodi generate 5, and a land drop will generate the 6th. But he has a Mox too. If he finds, he must have just shuffled back all the other Mox, and I think, he saw a lot of Mox in this game that he put back, right?
I think just 1.
The Brainstorm. Okay.
Yeah, I think he put back one of the lands to fetch out, and the off-color monster that goes the Emerald. All right, so Brian Kelly's going to take a 1-game lead here after a pretty wild game.
Wow. That was the narrowest of windows.
Really. So Bob just needed to find a lock piece or something. Brian's draw was really bad. His hand on turn 4 was 4 0-mana spells he couldn't cast and 3 lands with 3 lands in place. Real just nothingness.
And finding that DT was actually critical because it allowed him to post Will find the Tendrils. There weren't a lot of substitutes there.
Well, he also kind of needed every land he drew, and it was a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. This is crazy. What is he doing here? Oh, he's just repealing. Okay, I was going to say, he's floating blue when he doesn't need to do that. He needs to generate black.
Yeah, the Lotus will take care of that single-handedly, though.
Yeah, but he does need 3 black, so he needs to more Moxen. Oh, Brian has done a lot of damage to himself. 3 life. It
Yeah,
is
that's
interesting.
6 Gataxian probes will do to you.
One thing
Running
we
it up.
have, yeah, we haven't seen a lot of, in the heyday of Yawgmoth's Will, probe wasn't really prevalent, and in these big will, I mean, Brian's deck does a lot of damage to itself. He has Dark Confidants, he has Mana Crypt, he has 8 fetch lands, and these probes and so on. I mean, he really needs. It is a potential concern when you're playing with Gush and Dark Confidant. I mean, there's like seven five drop flips. Like a turn one Dark Confidant could easily, and he has got Jace too, so he could really suicide himself out fairly quickly if he's not careful.
Yeah. I mean, the Jaces and of course cards like Top and Brainstorm will certainly help against that. But
Right.
Vintage is a format where going to 1 life again a lot of matchups doesn't really mean much. I mean, it does if you're playing against Paul Rietzel, but against a lot
Right.
of other members of the league who are trying to kill you with Laboratory Maniac or similar nonsense, it's really not the end of the world. Bob becomes super powerful in those matchups.
That's true. Yeah, life is one of the most valuable resources. Um, so Brian gets to bring. I think Brian gets a lot. Obviously, gets a lot stronger post board. He gets to bring in 2 plows, certainly a Hercules recall, a disenchant, and another steel sabotage. I can't imagine he would bring in. I can't imagine he would bring in the Aethersworn Canonist or the Tormod's Crypt Containment Priest, and probably not the Mindbreak Trap. Uh,
He's not going
and
to be like Shuhei and have 3 mind break traps in shops.
that was so excessive. And Bob has in his board not a lot, honestly. He can bring in Dismember to destroy either Mentor or the Dark Confidant. He has a Maze Vith, which is pretty weak against the token generation. He's Batterskull. That seems strong. That's definitely strong. I was just mentioning this, but you don't really see Dark Confidant and Gush together a lot. There's kind of I think a built-in prejudice against that, just out of concern of just painful flips.
Well, he does have the mind break trap.
He brought it.
It could be good against Bob's opening hand with Black Lotus in it, although it doesn't seem like it's going to do much. It really depends on how Bob decides to end up sequencing things.
Yeah, I mean, Bob can lead with. He can lead with Smokestack and 2 expedition maps, but he won't have any mana to activate the expedition maps.
Right. Plus,
He
if he
can.
plays a map first, then the smokestack becomes vulnerable to that mind break trap.
This is a tricky hand to sequence. You played a lot more shops than I have. How would you play this if you were Bob? Assuming you
Not
keep
even
it.
sure this hand's good.
Yeah. Although you just said you like to keep hands with Black Lotus.
It's hard to mulligan a hand with Black Lotus, and he's got 2 of them. But
Yeah.
you can't really use these maps. Nor do I mean, I don't know. I haven't played this version of Shops. I think that I'd be very happy playing a Shops deck against Brian's deck in general, just a basic Shops deck closer to what Kai is playing. I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty good matchup for Shops. But I don't know. This deck just doesn't
Really?
have a lot of threats. Expedition maps and Dark Depths are just look at this land just sitting in his hand that it can win the game, but it also kind of does nothing. Can't even tap it to do the things you need to do, and this is a tough hand.
That's super awkward. Well, he's kept it. I have no idea how you sequence this. I guess there's 3 different options. You can play Smokestack and some number of map. You can lead with maps. Interesting that Brian Kelly has kept in Misstep. And looks like he's, yeah. The
Yeah,
lead
David
was
really kept in missteps against Bob as well. Just he's got one drops with cards like Expedition Map, and also he boards in his own missteps. So
right.
just another way to fight that battle.
And there's almost about 10 cards he can hit. Oh,
So
looks
this has
like
got to be the best way to sequence this, especially against a hand that has Mindbreak Trap in it. These Expedition Maps are not great, but they are smokestack fodder at the very least. So if he gets to keep one in play and has enough mana, he can certainly win the game with Dark Depths, which is a nice place to be, although he can't activate the map and he can't activate the stage, so pretty far away from that.
this is really bad. I mean, it looks like what might happen here is Brian's gonna disenchant the smokestack, and then he's got a Hercules on tap for anything else that might come down. Bob has just got to be living off the top here.
Yeah, but so is Brian. I mean, he's got the Ponder, but once he uses this disenchant, his hand is you know pretty low on gas too. That's what happens when you trade one for one.
Would you use the disenchant on the smokestack, or would you use the Hercules when you find out that Bob doesn't have a land that taps for mana?
Right. The fact that he can just play Mox Blue to Delta here and see how the turn plays out for an end step Hercules is, yeah, that's a good place to be. There's no reason to disenchant now, no matter what. So, yeah, let's see what Bob does. Like this smokestack's not even good. Not like Bob has permanence to stack to it either.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess like the fact that it will set the board back to nothing and Bob's got lands that produce extra mana is a good spot to be. But I mean, I guess not a good spot to be, not the worst spot to be.
right. Yeah, having workshop is always a good base to build from, but this is incredibly awkward. And ooh, that's actually a good draw here because forces him into using the disenchant rather than the Hercules before he knows that
He can just float the jet mana.
that's true.
So he just taps the jet now, let the Revoker resolve. Bob will try to go to combat, and he'll
And then
cast.
Hercules. That's true. You're right. No, Hercules is probably the play then. That's bad. Poor Bob. One of the ways in which Dark Depths is a liability does not tap for mana.
Yeah, one of the many ways. Also does nothing. Eats a land
Awkward.
drop, doesn't do anything.
Ooh,
There's a few ways.
yeah, I think Bob should have probably. No, I guess yeah. If he attacks, then it's not like he can pretend having shop and replay the goes to attack step. What I was thinking in my mind is maybe he should have gone to his second main in order to clear out Brian's black mana, but yeah, he would have cleared out his own shop mana and would not have been able to feign shop stack in any case. Okay, so we're gonna see Ponder here is my guess, right? There's
Mhm.
nothing worth, yeah, snapcasting yet.
Right. I mean, just having access to disenchant Snapcaster in your hand means that you're super far ahead. I mean, you know 2 out of 3 cards in Bob's hand, and they're not really exciting.
Right. The Brian Kelly setup would be like land Jace or like no Gush Jace would be even better. Next turn Gush Jace would be perfect setup. All right, so what's the best card Bob can draw here? Ah, that's a good one, but that's not the best. That's not even going to get you nearly where you need to be.
It might be the best because it could open up drawing Urborg.
Okay.
Like there are no good draw steps. Brian's hand has disenchant Snapcaster Gush, and Bob had
Oh,
nothing.
yeah, I was thinking an Ancient 2 might actually be the best, better than a second Workshop. Because then he gets 5 mana. He can play both Tanglewire and Revoker that way. But with Workshop, he would have been able to play Smokestack and Revoker. Either way, he needs more mana. Brian is contemplating whether to disenchant that is my guess. I think honestly that I would. With Snapcaster Mage in hand,
You just
that's a
flat out lose if he draws like Ancient Tomb and you don't disenchant, right? You don't give
yeah,
yourself any line to have outs really.
yeah, with especially with the combo in play. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
So here we go. One of my favorite plays. Leading with Gush. Kind of interested to see what mana he floats. I would typically float blue here, especially with the Jet reserve, and he does. Ooh. Time Walk, that wasn't the best Gush ever, but
Yeah,
I
he
think it.
didn't really need much though. I mean, it certainly doesn't put the game away. But Bob has outs. Can definitely win the game.
Do you play Snapcaster Ponder here, or do you play Time Walk? I actually think I like Snapcaster Ponder here.
Yeah, I'd play Snapcaster Ponder with Fetch Land in hand
Me too.
and Force of Will.
If you, yeah, if you play the Time Walk, you could play a land, your Time Walk turn, and Snapcaster Ponder, but then there's no guarantee you'll find another blue spell. I don't like that, but I'm sure it will work out well.
Yeah, Time Walk just doesn't really accomplish much.
Now he doesn't get the benefit of the Ponder and Shuffle.
Well, he also doesn't have to play Snapcaster now. He could leave it for a rainy day. Does he have answers to a 2020 flyer? Should
Yeah, well, he's got Repeal, and he has two plows.
have access to anything that in his grave? Like the graveyard's too small for me to see, so I'm just going from memory.
Yeah, his graveyard is Misstep, Mindbreak Trap, Ponder, Time Walk, Gush, and Hurkyl's Recall.
So his best bet is probably just keep using library manipulation spells to try to find answers for the
Yeah,
best case scenario.
I definitely agreed with you though. I think he should have pondered earlier
Yeah.
because he does need to find an answer. Although he does have enough answers. I mean, he also has Jace as an answer. Oh, Jace will not be an answer if Bob draws.
I mean, he may
Ancient.
not need to find an answer. Like Bob could just
Yeah,
end up getting there, but we'll see.
interesting. Next turn, Bob has to decide whether to play. Assuming he doesn't draw something that can activate the Thespian stage, he has to decide whether to go with Smokestack or Revoker. Mentor is pretty good. I mean, I presume he starts with Smokestack, but you also are at a point where Brian could potentially have been holding Jace. That's also nice. So now he can do both Thorn and Revoker or Smokestack. Which would you do?
I think he's going to lead on Smokestack. Just see what happens.
This is a tough one.
It gives you more options for future turns potentially. It does line up really bad if your opponent actually has Monastery Mentor, though.
Yeah. I think I would. I think honestly, I think I would do Thorn Revoker because you can revoke the jet. What?
I thought he was going to go Smokestack, but I do prefer the Thorn Revoker line.
Yeah. Yeah, that turns off. It basically takes him down to one land. Right now. It impedes his capacity to play Smokestack next turn.
Yeah, that is definitely an issue. But he's either going to be drawing a land or he's going to be drawing a spell he can hopefully cast. It's kind of, the thought process at least. Although that could end up just being something like Expedition Map or
Right.
something else that he can't really use. A Mox that doesn't actually get him anywhere. especially if it's
Ah,
a jet at this point.
well, I think we've got a game now.
Mm,
Maybe.
good.
The Monastery Mentor is not playable right now. Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it
Yeah, it
is.
is. Yeah.
Thorn doesn't even impact it.
Right. I was thinking that he needed another land, but he in fact has another land. So, but he won't be able to force a smokestack if Bob draws another mana source.
Yeah,
Or
stack is pretty weak against Mentor in general, especially when they have 4+ mana sources out. It looks like it's going to be 5 at the end of this turn, potentially, depending on if this ends up being a trade. No, Bob will keep his Revoker. So that means Brian can't actually play his Mox Ruby this turn.
no, nor does he really want to. Ooh, that was pretty good.
Is it?
Well, it allows him to play smokestack.
Yeah.
He's gonna. I
He's
mean,
facing a pretty quick clock though, so and
this.
Smokestack is not the most exciting. I think finding something that he could actually use to turn on this stage would have been what he was looking for, or at least something like, I don't know, Dismember if he's got it in, or
Well,
similar.
this. Yeah, he's almost. I mean, he almost has enough mana though to activate the thing. He just needs to survive long enough, and the combination of the Thorn and the Revoker are going to slow down this Mentor. I mean, the Mentor right now, as it stands, is only going to be able to generate one Monk.
Well, like you don't really have excess permanency stacking to Smokestack. You need your Workshop to be casting anything. You need your mana source, and you need your Dark Depths.
Well, if he draws any mana source, the Workshop is going to be the first one sacrificed.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what he sacrifices if he draws a mana source because there's going to be a 20/20 flyer in play.
And that doesn't really help. Doesn't help Brian yet.
Yeah, this game's definitely more interesting than you would have thought it would have been. That's being staged. The first one he drew is definitely has opened up the game to,
The
live draws.
the biggest dagger here would be if Bob draws Mox Chat.
Yeah. Although it's possible he could trade off this Revoker. It's possible his attack will lead to a block. Although even if he tries to play a Mox, Brian may just force a will it. I mean, he knows
Just to get a token. Yeah.
Oh no,
definitely.
to keep him off.
Oh yeah,
keep 20.
for sure. For
It's
sure.
just a time
Yeah.
walk.
Both.
It's a time
yeah.
walk and a token.
Yeah. Brian is just poised to force whatever he plays.
Bob needs a land that taps for mana.
Yeah, in the ideal scenario. And not a Dark Depths. Oh god. He would have greatly appreciated that last game.
Or probably earlier in this game, maybe not.
Well, at least it's likely to draw out the well, it's not even going to draw out the force, is it? It's
Yeah.
not something. Yeah, it's not even something you have to force. That's awkward.
This Revoker kind of threatens to trade with Monastery Mentor at this point, which is not
That's true.
the first.
Yeah, this Revoker is kind of like holding down the fort. He's strong. He's like the little
Still has
attendant.
one.
Yeah, he's like the attendant to the Cthulhu here, like trying to protect everything. Bob is seriously thinking about whether he should even play this, which I can understand because if Bob's plan is to sacrifice the shop, well, I think his plan has just got to be to sacrifice the Trinisphere.
Right. If you were going to sacrifice the shop, you could sacrifice the Trinisphere, and then you're
First.
playing it.
Right. And then Brian
It's gonna be
probably
interesting
does.
to see if he ticks up. That
Yeah.
Smokestack. The Smokestack. He could just sack the Smokestack. Honestly, the card's not doing anything this game. Like he's either going to get a 20/20 out there,
Yeah,
or he's going to get
Or he's
run
gonna
over
lose.
by Monked, and so it really is not doing anything.
that's very true.
Right now, Brian can just sack the Mox Jet, which didn't have an impact anyway. Couldn't tap for mana. Like, he's got 5 lands out and 3 creatures, even after 5 mana, even after sacking the Smokestack. It's just the card's just not doing anything. Unless he can somehow tick it up to 4 in time and still be alive to sweep the entire board, but that doesn't seem like a great spot to be. Well,
Ooh, that was insane.
yeah. Well, I guess there's a Trinisphere out
the
that
Trinisphere is
can't
the
actually just ancestral.
It's amazing. The Trinisphere has actually done something.
It's done something, but it's still a very good draw. I guess Force of Will is now turned off.
Yeah, yeah. This will allow Bob to draw Mox and activate this. I You can't get the Hercules because the Hercules is gone. You can't play Steel Sabotage.
I mean, the card that matters right now is whether there's going to be a 2020 flyer in play or not. And Merchant
Right.
Scroll, I assume you're just going to go get
As,
Ancestral?
well, you could get Repeal. That might be the
Ooh,
answer.
Repeal. Yep, that is what you get.
Merchant Scroll is wow. That's a great card. Yep,
Well,
there it
Repeal's
is.
been the MVP. It's going to win the last game. It's going to lock up this one for. It seems that way, at least.
Unbelievable. Well, Bob at least knows it's there.
Well, this smokestack may be ticking up.
Yeah, it looks like the smokestack plan is now
Right.
the plan.
I think that Brian just wins on his turn, though. I guess he needs one more mana source to be able
Yeah.
to go with the Trinisphere in play.
Yeah, he needs 4 mana to repeal a Trinisphere. And that's
Well,
not.
Yeah, he could just win with prowess with repealing a Mox if he had another mana
Fair enough.
to replay the Mox.
Yeah, because now he's. Boy,
This
I
one's gonna
I
have
would be
to trade.
very tempted to trade.
Yes.
What?
No,
Why trade with the Snapcaster Mage? It can take out. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, he played Merchant Scroll. Yeah, the prowess, the mentor. I can't see the card, but it's a 3/3. I forgot that he was boosted by Merchant Scroll. Yeah, that's the biggest threat. Okay, here we go. Ramp time. So the first question is he needs to decide which of these artifacts to sacrifice. That's.
Well, the Thorn's doing the least with Trinisphere in play, right?
I might just take out the Dark Depths, though. Really.
What?
I mean, it doesn't. It's the least.
Well,
What?
if the thing is, if Bob does draw the mana source and he's able to, like, depending on what Brian sacrifices to the smokestack, it's possible he's not going to have the mana to repeal unless he sacks his creatures.
Well, there's the mana he needed, and the Wasteland's interesting because it definitely complicates the repeal math. I think your point is though he can just win right now, right? He can just repeal.
He can't because the smokestack is forcing him to sack.
Oh, right.
Well, he if he draws a mana source, what he can do is float during his upkeep, repeal the Mox, but he can't do that now because the Dark Depths is turned on. So he can just make a 20/20
Wow.
and kill him. So right now,
Wow.
Brian can't go for the win.
So Bob played this perfectly.
I mean, he did play to his outs, but it's an interesting game. I mean, Brian could end up making a mistake with sacrifices to the smokestack or draw the wrong card, and maybe Bob gets lucky somewhere.
I would have been so strongly tempted to hit that, to just get the Dark Depths, because sacrifice the Dark Depths, because when you know your opponent has repeal, it loses so much of its value. When you activate the Thespian
You have
stage,
smokestack on 2 and a Trinisphere out, so
yeah,
he's
But-
just open.
but that's still just enough to play. I mean, all you need is 1 mana to repeal the token.
It is
3 mana. You need 3 mana with the Trinisphere in play, which is he has even with the smokestack taking out 2 mana.
What is Brian doing here? He's tapping 4 mana.
I don't understand what he's doing either.
If he repeals the Trinisphere, doesn't the 20/20 come down? Am I missing something?
Oh, wait, no, that's not going to work. I think I see what he's doing. He's going to repeal the Trinisphere, sacrifice 2 lands, hope to draw 2 spells that can just win the game, like a Cataxian Probe and a Mox, right? That's the plan? Oh, no, he can't probe. He won't be able to probe with the Trinisphere in play.
No, the Thorn, yeah.
Yeah, the Thorn and the Trinisphere.
He's got to bounce some. I mean, he's trying to bounce something, right?
But none of that works.
No, that would not work out well for him. I don't think.
That would just
I could be missing something. I mean, I've missed things plenty of times in my life.
Yeah, I just think the combination of the Thorn and the Trinisphere means this plan of trying to win.
He can't even bounce Trinisphere for 4 mana because the Thorn actually does impact it.
He needs to play 2 spells this turn to win the game. If he plays 2, then the
No, he needs to play 3 if he taps mana because there will be a 20/20 to block.
Oh yeah, he'll have a blocker too. I didn't even think about that piece.
If he casts this repeal on turn,
Oh,
he just loses, right?
this just fails. I think Brian Kelly had outs. I think had the out, but I think he just
Oh,
punted.
I think this is exactly what Bob needed. Like this is what I was
Yeah.
saying. This is what he played to. He needed Brian to punt the game. Like he needed to do something with Trin Spears and Smokestacks so that a 2020 could come out because he knows about the repeal. Again, maybe I'm missing something. Someone tell me if I'm missing something. Like this game
No,
looked like it was over. Like the repeal is just going to lock Bob out.
no, this is totally over. Completely 100% over. I guess I get no. No, I'm sorry.
They
The
do,
out.
right?
No, I'm mistaken. The out was actually this. The out was you repeal the Trinisphere, you sacrifice 2 of your mana, you have to draw a land and a Cataxian Probe, or a land and a Mox. And I'm sorry, you're right. You need 3 spells. No, no, but that's 3 spells. If he has a Probe, a Mox, and the repeal, that's
you
enough.
Want him to draw a Mox, a land, and a probe? He only gets 2 draws.
No, all he needs to do is draw a land and another 0 mana spell.
No, because that's only 2 spells, right?
No, because
and the 0 mana spell.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
2020 blocks. The Thorn shuts off being able to draw like Gush and a spell. Like
I think Brian just missed the fact that this 2020 is going to block. It is a blocker.
I assume so.
Here it comes.
But even if it not being a blocker, it's going to kill him.
Right. That's true. Yeah, there's nothing there that worked. There's nothing there that worked. The repeal was just a dead end play. I'm trying to just guess at what Brian's thought process was.
Okay, let's see how this game plays out if he doesn't do something like that. So he's got to sack 2 permanents. Let's say he sacks Monks, and his plan isn't even to attack. Or it is to attack, because if Bob takes the 2020, kill it. He could sack a Monk and a land, a Monk and a Mock, something like that. He's still going to have 6 lands out.
No, the game is totally over, right? I mean, he generates the token, he blocks, he untaps, attacks, and kills Brian. Brian is never going to be in a position to sacrifice Monks to Smokestack.
No, Brian can never lose. He can never make the 2020 because of the repeal. Brian's got 6 lands in play.
Brian is dead on board.
I know. I'm saying if he didn't punt the game, what would have happened?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Would the Smokestack... Because Bob can't make the 2020 because of the repeal.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think he just punted by playing the repeal.
So he otherwise punted in 2 turns before the Smokestack basically left the board at complete annihilation is what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, the Monk would race the Smokestack, overwhelm the Smokestack, and Bob was not in a position to ever play spells again because he sacrificed his Workshop. So
right. Brian could have just attacked with his 3 creatures that turn, put Bob to 4, still had enough lands for repeal. Bob could tick the Smokestack up to 3, but he's losing all his permanents, so he can't even threaten the 2020 next turn. And so yeah, Brian just wins on the following turn.
Well, that was quick. So Bob has 2 spheres, 3 spheres, and Ancient Tomb. I really like Bob's hand. Bob's hand is strong.
Well, so is Brian's.
So is Brian's. We got a real game on our hands.
We do. Bob's got Black Lotus in his opening hand for the 3rd game in a row, right?
Yeah. That's true.
Well, this is a really key game to be on the play if you're Brian Kelly when you've got Mox, Lotus, or Lotus Petal, land, top, and your opponent would have played multiple sphere effects on turn 1.
Insane.
Although I guess he could have only played 2 because they impact each other.
Right.
So now Brian's just going to have
3
mana available.
So what are you going to steal Sabotage here? I assume the way it's going to play out is Bob will lead with the Mox Emerald.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll probably play the Lotus, unless he's concerned about Mind Break Trap. And then he'll lead with one of the spheres, and then he'll Ancient Tomb the 2nd sphere, right? That's probably the sequence.
Yeah, he may not actually play the 2nd sphere and sack the Lotus with the way the hands line up. So
I guess the question is, if you're Brian, do you Steel Sabotage the Lotus, or do you Steel Sabotage the one of the Thorns, or none of them at all? The Thorns don't impact him from playing Mentor.
Well, I don't know what he just topped. There is a reasonable
Yeah,
likelihood that you steel sabotage any of these or none of these. Very
right.
much depending on what your top three cards are. Like it's all completely feasible. His hand
Dependent
is
on what.
great. Steel sabotaging the first sphere in the dark is typically what you would want to do, especially with Snapcaster to go be able to cast the other one. That
I
would stop a spell the next turn. Of
I
course, with
think you.
Black Lotus landing first, that means that you know you're at risk if you steel sabotage the first thing. The fact that you have a Lotus Petal in play means that even if a sphere resolves, if you need to stop a Lodestone Golem or something this turn, you can still do that.
Well, Bob is planning to play two spheres. He's got to play the Emerald first, which will expose him to Mindbreak Trap. But at this point, I think you just gotta be like, you not worry about Mindbreak Trap, right? Because the having the
I
Mox in
don't
play.
think there's a lot of gain in trying to play the second sphere this turn.
Well, the sphere of resistance is so much more important than the thorn. So you really want to get a thorn down to help clear the way for a sphere, right? Or is your plan to play the sphere of resistance last after the two thorns? Yeah, there we go. So he came to the conclusion that I did just after sacrificing the Lotus first.
Yeah, the all sphere draw comes in the first time that Bob is finally on the draw.
Yeah, his hand would have just been backbreaking in any of the either of the
Oh yeah,
previous two games.
and it would be
Just
backbreaking
crushing.
against a lot of draws that Brian would have. He just happened to put 4 mana in play immediately.
Well, that
So
was a
Brian's
two.
actually going to sack Petal.
Yeah, that was a 2-for-1. That worked out really well for Bob. He must really want the top cards of his library, which is interesting. This is not something that I would expect Bob to do, but does that mean you maybe like wasteland the fetch just to
I think Wasteland is too good against how few lands are in his deck that you probably don't, but it's worth consideration. Like this Thorn that's going to resolve might be enough that it's throwing off the top card of his library. Brian's got one card in hand.
I,
One.
I,
So
I
like,
really
it,
don't like playing that thorn there. I think he should have played Sphere. Like I think it's just
yeah,
absolutely clear he should have played Sphere.
yep, I agree with you.
Because Dark Confidant, Mentor, these are all problem.
Yeah, this definitely opens you up to just getting mentored and the game being over. Wow, another Steel Sabotage. All right, it's a good card.
This is the kind of games I really relish in Vintage, where you don't really know who's gonna win. That both players have a lot of things they can do.
Well, I'm not even sure I would have thought to waste on the Flood Strain, but I think you made a really good point. I think the answer is no. I think you don't.
Yeah.
But it would have merited a reasonable amount of consideration. It was
Yeah, the fact that he used the Lotus Petal to play the Steel Sabotage is a pretty big signal. And if he finds the a dual land, then you've got another Wasteland on deck. So he's got to get a basic.
Yeah. Luckily for him, his monsters happen to be on color.
The best ones. I was about to say the same thing. Well,
Otherwise, it's kind of ugly.
I would definitely have Steel Sabotaged that. I guess it's yeah. Last game he would not have. He would have been able to activate the top, draw the Steel Sabotage on top, fetch Island and Steel Sabotage Sphere, but he would have lost the top had he gone that route. Oh God, that mental misstep is amazing. Oh, wow, wow, that is like one of the best mental missteps that he could. Wow, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Ooh.
The mental missteps in Bob's sideboard have been pretty awesome. But Brian does have top in play. And he gets to see a fresh 3 he just fetched. It's interesting because he really does need big spells, but he... wow. All right.
That's like the best possible draw.
Yeah.
And
honestly, that pretty much ends the game. That is insane.
That's
Hoisted
fantastic.
by his own Bob
Tard. Oh, well, he has plenty of mana, but he needs good things to do with it. Bob needs to draw a dismember like ASAP.
It's probably already too late.
Maybe.
I mean, Brian's going to have access to looking at 5 cards next turn at a minimum.
Brian had not seen that bob, right? He didn't put that bob there, or did he? Oh no, he did. He OT
Got the
activate.
shuffle and then he topped. So
Okay, so he put it there. There you go.
and it
So
was great.
he's gonna
A
upkeep.
lot better than Sylvan Library that wouldn't have been able to be cast would have been.
True enough. This is a little bit like Sylvan here. Dark Confidant and top, but better, much better.
Know that I would be activating top in my upkeep, but
Yeah, I kind of like doing it there, but there are a lot of sphere effects on the table. It's true. It
I mean he knows two of the cards are anyway, so he's only seeing one extra one, and he's drawing two cards. So being able to use that end step to see a fresh three and having all your mana available is what I would have done, especially if you're able to find something like Steel Sabotage, so you could still
yeah,
cast it.
and now he's committed to continuing to use it on his upkeep, likely. So it's a little bit of an awkward spot.
Well, he's certainly not committed to just draw two cards, and he's not going to hit a 19 drop, and the game is over.
That's true. That's true. He is at 19 life, but I think that's what he's going to do, and indeed he is. It would be really nice to find a land here. Then he can tap 2 mana gush. Not yet. He can't gush yet. So Bob draws a smokestack. There's a reasonable chance that he can race Brian, right?
No.
Reas- not even then.
No,
Oh, looks like this game
so.
may have just ended. Yeah, because he can play Jace right now, right? No, he needs one more mana.
Like if he, I think it's just a mistake to be using the top of the upkeep, especially right now. He like let's say he just drew two blanks. Like he drew six drop that could is uncastable. Like the card
Right.
text says this card can't be cast, and another card that says the same thing. He still has access to just Snapcaster. It only costs 3 mana and Steel Sabotage for 3 mana. The type of cards he can lose to are like Batter Skull, Wormcoil Engine, big creature type things, and
Right. But he had Force of Will up, and now he can cast Jace. And this is and Bob drew the worst possible card, the Workshop, because he already has plenty of mana with Academy. Workshop, like,
sure there are worse cards. There's a lot of
Let's
bad
see.
cards in Bob's deck.
yeah, Bob would love to have drawn. I mean, even like Revoker would have been fine. Revoker, Golem, Smokestack, Crucible is not great. Expedition Map would have been fine because he can get. I guess he does have a Maze of Ith, but I doubt he brought it in.
I honestly don't think any of these cards are helping him even in the slightest. Like just the Dark Confidant drawing two cards a turn is going to win the game. He's going to
Yeah.
find too much mana. They can cast his spells, and once you can cast your spells against the Workshop deck and you can cast your counters, they have so few cards that do anything that you just win.
Yeah, it's true.
Like once a Jace the Mind Sculptor comes down, the game can never. Yeah, Shop Slayer just can't win. It's just over.
Yeah, this is it.
And the Dark Confidant is just going to provide too much. I mean, shutting down top would be nice. Like maybe the Bob somehow kills him if you're able to revoke top. It's just not realistic.
Brian Kelly is just pulled way ahead on the back of a well timed Dark Confidant.
Yeah. Thorn is not as good as Sphere. Not against Bob. So we've had 3 of our 4 relegated players from last season. 2 of them are, at a minimum, are going to be eliminated. Steve, of course, making it back into the league, but now Bob, Kai, and Tom are all going to be in that single elimination tournament. They're going to be joined by Nick Koss, Andy Probasco, Reed Duke. We're going to have a match next round between Shuei Nakamura and David Williams. Of course, the loser of that is going to join the tournament as well. And Caleb Durward as well. Should be a pretty exciting single elimination we got next week.
Oh,
With one more match to go before that.
super intense.
Of course, we've already seen Shuhei play against Dave Williams in the singles matchup, and it was probably the best match of Magic we've seen in the 3 weeks.
That was my favorite match as well.
So hopefully we'll see some good draws and some good Magic there. We're exactly a world apart, a 13-hour time
Right.
difference or something.
Yeah, Shuhei is like, I guess it's the middle of the day for Shuhei, right?
Yeah, I mean he had the first match today and he hadn't woken up yet, and and it's about to be midnight where Dave is. So.
Well, this is pro forma here. Wow.
Now Bob did draw plenty of lock pieces this game, and
Definitely
got to deploy some of his game plan. But at the same time, he still hasn't found anything that does anything. Like
Yeah.
a few spheres, but he still hasn't found like a revoker, a lodestone, even a factory, a dark, some way to threaten to win the game. So this game's going to be tough even without that Dark Confidant. The top was probably going to provide enough of a card filtering system that Brian would have had a decent chance. But
Bob had like a 2-turn window to really draw something useful, like a smokestack, or that might not have been quite good enough. But he had time. He just drew, after drawing Tolarian Academy, he drew Mishra's Workshop.
And then the 2 Moxes, especially having them be Jet and Pearl, were just so crucial because it allowed Brian to go fetch his island, and that was the only way to actually be able to capture the threat. I mean, if Bob had drawn a strip mine instead of one of the Wastelands, he'd be in business. This game would probably be Bob's, or at least he'd be pretty far ahead for a long time.
Yeah, Brian's deck is not designed to be able to operate off of one land, and yet there were like a number of terms where he just had one land. I mean,
Especially
he does
with Spear and Thorn in play.
Yeah, exactly.
So Brian just has to play a single spell here. Finish it off. He's going to oblige. So, as is normal when Bob plays against someone named Brian in a big match, they do play extra games.
Ouch.
But Brian Kelly is going to take this match 3-0.
Very impressive. Great games.
Yeah, I mean, again, Brian had Game 2 locked up, which just goes to show like how good his deck is. Like he won this match 3-0, winning 2 games on the draw more or less, and that's not easy to do against Shop's decks. And I don't know if it had more to do with the type of deck that Bob was actually playing versus something that maybe Kai was playing, but definitely an impressive result. Steel Sabotage was great, and Repeal ended up being an MVP. So
Repeal was responsible for definitely winning. It or Steel Sabotage would have won the first game, but Repeal was just the best possible one.
So we've got our 7th name in red. Bob Marr joins the list, and welcome Brian Kelly.
This has been Iron Man Vintage this evening. I mean, this is the greatest number of matches we've ever had in the VSL, I believe, right? 7 matches. And this last match, this is not going to be a fast match. I mean, we've got on one hand, we have Landstill, and then we have Shuhei Nakamura, who plays this Oath deck like Landstill. So, buckle up. I think this is going to be a long match.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for good Magic. I wouldn't mind if they played lightning fast and it took a bunch of turns. But at the same time, this is match 7. This is for the final spot. So, yourself, Stephen Menendian, Brian Kelly, Paul Rietzel. First 3 spots locked up. The last one's going to go to Shuhei Nakamura or David Williams. We're about to find out who that is. And, of course, tune in next week as you can see all the players who, have not made the cut. And there's a lot of really great ones. We'll be playing single elimination next week for that 5th and final spot to see who joins myself, LSV, David Ochoa, Rich Shea, and Randy Bueller in VSL Season 5.
Stick around. Stick around for last match.